The microphone crackled to life in a dingy Allied interrogation room. It was 1946, and the war had been over for months. But what the captured German general said next would have shocked the world if anyone had been listening. "We hated them more than we hated you Americans. Those black uniformed fanatics weren't soldiers. They were Hitler's attack dogs, and we spent 6 years cleaning up their mess." The interviewer leaned forward. This wasn't what they expected to hear from a Wehrmacht officer. The general continued, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "If I'm being honest, by the end, I wanted you to win just to be rid of Himmler and his SS. We were fighting 2 wars, one against the Allies and another against our own countrymen. Brr. What you're about to discover is one of history's most buried secrets, a story of hatred so deep it nearly tore Nazi Germany apart from within. This isn't the sanitized version you learned in school about German military unity. This is the real story of how Hitler's own forces came to despise each other more than any foreign enemy. We're talking about Wehrmacht generals plotting against SS leaders, secret orders ignored, supplies deliberately sabotaged, brothers in arms becoming mortal enemies. A civil war that almost erupted in the middle of World War II. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, let me take you through the classified files, secret recordings, and testimonies that were buried for 8 decades. Stories of Wehrmacht officers who chose to fight alongside Americans rather than serve with the SS. Of German soldiers who would rather die than accept SS medical treatment. Of a military rivalry that became so toxic, it helped lose Germany the war. This is the story they never wanted you to know. The story of how Hitler accidentally created his own worst enemy by building 2 armies instead of 1. Picture Berlin in November 1938. The Reich Chancellery is hosting what should have been a celebration of German military unity. Wehrmacht generals in their traditional gray uniforms sit across from SS leaders in their intimidating black dress uniforms. It's the first formal meeting between these 2 forces as supposed equals. The tension is immediate. You could cut it with a knife. General Ludwig Beck, chief of the German General Staff, would later write in his private diary about that evening. The moment he shook hands with Heinrich Himmler, he knew they were looking at Germany's future enemies. Not the British, not the French, not the Soviets. Each other. Heinrich Himmler, the pale, calculating leader of the SS, surveyed the room full of Prussian officers with barely concealed contempt. These men represented everything he despised about old Germany. Ancient traditions, aristocratic bloodlines, loyalty to institutions rather than ideology. They were obstacles to his vision of a racially pure military elite. The Wehrmacht officers weren't impressed either. They saw political appointees playing dress-up in military uniforms. These SS men had never heard a shot fired in anger, never earned their rank through battlefield competence, never bled for Germany in the trenches of the Great War. Then came the moment that changed everything. During dinner, conversation turned to military tradition. General Wilhelm Keitel mentioned the Wehrmacht's proud lineage stretching back to Frederick the Great, the Prussian officer corps. Centuries of military excellence built on honor, duty, and professional competence. Himmler set down his fork. The entire room fell silent. "Your traditions are holding Germany back," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "The SS represents the future. We are the new Germany. Racially pure, ideologically committed, absolutely loyal to the Führer." The Wehrmacht officers stared in stunned disbelief. No one had ever spoken to them like this. These were men whose families had served the German state for generations. Their ancestors had died in countless wars. Their blood was German soil. Then Erwin Rommel spoke up. At 37, he was younger than most generals in the room, but his reputation was already legendary. He'd earned Germany's highest military honor in the trenches of World War I. When he looked at Himmler, There was no respect in his eyes. "You're politicians in costume," Rommel said quietly. "Playing soldier while real soldiers do the fighting." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Himmler's face flushed red. His hand moved instinctively toward where his sidearm would be. For a moment, it looked like violence might erupt right there in Hitler's dining room. Hitler himself had to intervene, laughing nervously and changing the subject to hunting. But the damage was done. After dinner, as officers filed out, General Heinz Guderian pulled aside his old friend General Erich von Manstein. "Mark my words, Erich," Guderian said. "Before this war ends, we'll be shooting at each other." Manstein tried to laugh it off. "Don't be ridiculous, Heinz. We're all Germans here." Guderian shook his head grimly. "No, we're Germans. There's something else entirely." Within days, the fallout began. Himmler sent a private memo to Hitler, complaining about Wehrmacht insubordination. He demanded that SS officers be given equal rank and authority in all military matters. The Wehrmacht, he wrote, was infected with outdated thinking that threatened Nazi ideology. The Wehrmacht leadership fired back through their own channels. General Beck wrote directly to Hitler, warning that the SS was attempting to create a state within a state. Military efficiency required clear chains of command, not competing ideologies. But Hitler saw opportunity in this conflict. Divide and conquer. Let them compete for his favor. Let them check each other's power. What he didn't realize was that he was creating something far more dangerous than rivalry. He was turning his own military into enemies. Within weeks of that dinner party, Wehrmacht officers were already planning ways to limit SS influence. Secret meetings in private homes, coded discussions about the problem. They began referring to the SS as party soldiers, and not as a compliment. The SS responded by recruiting more aggressively from Wehrmacht ranks. They offered better pay, faster promotions, and most importantly, access to Hitler's inner circle. Young Wehrmacht officers found themselves forced to choose sides. Captain Klaus von Stauffenberg, who would later lead the plot to assassinate Hitler, wrote to his wife after that dinner party, "The SS represents everything wrong with our new Germany. They've turned military service into political theater." But perhaps the most prophetic words came from General Beck himself. In his final diary entry, before resigning in protest, he wrote, "November 8, 1938, will be remembered as the night German military unity died. What Hitler has created is not an army. It's two armies, and two armies cannot serve the same master." He was right. That dinner party didn't create military unity. It created a civil war waiting to happen. The recruitment wars began almost immediately. By 1939, every Wehrmacht unit was required to watch SS propaganda films. Perfect specimens marching across the screen. Tall, blonde, sculpted like Greek gods. The narrator boomed about racial purity and the new German warrior. Wehrmacht veterans started laughing, not politely, openly mocking. "Look at these circus performers," one corporal whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. 6 feet tall, blonde hair, can't tell a rifle from a broomstick. But their laughter died when SS recruitment officers arrived the next morning. They had orders direct from Heinrich Himmler himself. The SS needed recruits, and they were going to take the best from Wehrmacht units, whether the Wehrmacht liked it or not. The criteria were specific and insulting. Height, minimum 5'9". Hair blonde preferred, eyes blue if possible. Build athletic. And most importantly, they had to prove Aryan ancestry back to 1870. Wehrmacht commanders watched in helpless rage as SS officers selected soldiers based on appearance rather than ability. Not their best fighters. Their tallest, most Nordic-looking men. These weren't necessarily the most experienced soldiers or the most skilled marksmen. They were chosen because they looked like Nazi propaganda posters. The best machine gunner, a short, dark-haired veteran of 3 campaigns, was passed over for a tall recruit who'd never seen combat. The most reliable radio operator was rejected because his grandmother was Czech. This scene played out across Germany. Wehrmacht commanders were losing their most photogenic soldiers to SS units that prioritized appearance over ability. The humiliation was intentional and systematic, but the Wehrmacht fought back in their own way. They began hiding their best-looking recruits during SS inspections, sending them on training exercises when recruitment officers visited. Some commanders deliberately assigned their most attractive soldiers to distant outposts. The SS caught on quickly. They started demanding complete unit rosters and conducting surprise inspections. Wehrmacht officers who obstructed SS recruitment faced disciplinary action and sometimes worse. The competition became vicious. SS recruitment officers would promise Wehrmacht soldiers immediate promotions, better pay, and access to the latest equipment if they transferred. They painted the Wehrmacht as old-fashioned, hidebound, stuck in the past. The SS, they claimed, was the future of German military power. Some soldiers believed it. The allure of better uniforms, higher status, and political connections was strong. But others saw through the propaganda. Private Wilhelm Fischer was one of the soldiers recruited from a Wehrmacht unit. Years later, he would describe his experience. They made us feel special at first, called us the racial elite of Germany. But when the shooting started, being tall and blonde didn't stop Russian bullets. The Wehrmacht veterans we'd left behind, they were still alive because they knew how to fight, not how to pose. The Wehrmacht's resentment grew deeper with every recruitment raid. They began referring to SS soldiers as Himmler's pretty boys or parade ground warriors. Officers passed around jokes about SS soldiers who needed mirrors to practice their goose step. But it wasn't just about losing personnel. It was about losing respect. Wehrmacht commanders had spent years building elite units based on skill, experience, and battlefield performance. Now they watched as the SS created elite units based on hair color and height measurements. It felt like a mockery of everything the military stood for. The situation reached a breaking point in October 1939. SS recruiters arrived at the barracks of the Wehrmacht's elite Alpine Corps, mountain training. They announced specialists with years of specialized, they were forming an SS mountain division and needed experienced climbers. The Wehrmacht commander, Colonel Georg Ritter, refused to cooperate. He locked down his base and told the SS officers to get authorization from Wehrmacht High Command. When they threatened him with arrest, he reportedly said, "Go ahead, arrest a man who's bled for Germany while you were playing politics." See how that looks in the newspapers. The SS backed down that day, but they filed reports with Himmler claiming Wehrmacht sabotage of SS recruitment efforts. The war between the services was escalating from competition to outright hostility. And it was about to get much worse, because when the real war started, the recruitment disputes would pale in comparison to what happened when these two forces tried to fight together. North Africa, 1941. The Desert War was in full swing, and Erwin Rommel had just been promoted to command the Africa Corps. Hitler was worried, not about the British, but about keeping his favorite general alive. So he made a decision that would create the first open warfare between Wehrmacht and SS command structures. The order came directly from the Führer's headquarters. Rommel would be assigned an SS protection detail. Elite SS guards would handle his personal security. It seemed reasonable. Protect Germany's most successful general. Rommel's response was immediate and explosive. "I don't want those political soldiers anywhere near my men." His aide-de-camp later recorded the exact conversation in his wartime diary. When Wehrmacht liaison officers suggested that refusing Hitler's protection might be seen as insubordination, Rommel's face turned red with anger. "I've been protecting myself since 1914. I don't need politicians in black uniforms to hold my hand now, but it went deeper than personal pride." Rommel understood what SS presence in his command would mean. Divided loyalty, political oversight, someone watching his every move and reporting back to Heinrich Himmler. He'd watched it happen to other commanders, SS liaisons, who gradually took over operational decisions, military objectives sacrificed for political goals. He wouldn't let it happen to the Afrika Korps, so Rommel did something unprecedented. He went around Wehrmacht High Command and appealed directly to Hitler. In a personal letter marked "Führer Eyes Only," he wrote, "My Führer, the Afrika Korps fights as one family. We share the same dangers, the same hardships, the same victories. To introduce outside elements would destroy the unity that makes us effective. I request permission to handle my own security with my own men." Hitler was caught between his two favorite organizations. The SS demanded their rightful place in protecting important commanders. But Rommel was winning battles, something that mattered more than ideology in the middle of a war. After 3 days of deliberation, Hitler made his choice. Rommel could refuse SS protection. It was an almost unprecedented exception to SS authority. Himmler was furious. He immediately sent a message to all SS commanders, warning them about Wehrmacht arrogance and the need to maintain SS prerogatives. The message was clear. This wouldn't happen again. But Rommel wasn't finished. Emboldened by Hitler's support, he issued his own directive to Afrika Korps units. No SS personnel would be allowed in North Africa without his personal approval. No SS political officers, no SS liaisons, no SS observers. The desert would remain Wehrmacht territory. His aide recorded another conversation where Rommel explained his reasoning to his senior officers. "The SS fights for Hitler. We fight for Germany. Sometimes that's not the same thing." Those words would have been treasonous if anyone had reported them. But his officers understood exactly what he meant. The SS was a political organization first, military second. The Wehrmacht was military first, everything else second. The exclusion of SS forces from North Africa became a powerful symbol for Wehrmacht officers everywhere. If Rommel could say no to the SS, maybe they could too. Resistance to SS integration began spreading throughout Wehrmacht commands. General Heinz Guderian started requiring military necessity justifications for any SS involvement in his tank operations. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt implemented coordination delays that effectively blocked SS units from joining Wehrmacht operations. Admiral Karl Dönitz banned SS personnel from submarine bases entirely. Each act of resistance was technically within military regulations, but collectively, they represented open defiance of Nazi plans to integrate SS forces throughout the German military. The SS fought back through bureaucratic warfare. They began requiring Wehrmacht units to justify their rejection of SS assistance. They demanded written explanations for any operation that didn't include SS participation. They flooded Wehrmacht commands with paperwork designed to slow down non-SS operations. But Rommel had given Wehrmacht officers something more powerful than bureaucracy: precedent. Hitler himself had agreed that military effectiveness was more important than SS political control. The conflict reached a new level of intensity in December 1941. SS Oberfuhrer Kurt Meyer requested permission to bring an SS regiment to North Africa to observe Afrika Korps tactics. Officially, it was a training mission. Unofficially, everyone knew it was an attempt to establish SS presence in Rommel's territory. Rommel's response was swift and brutal. He denied the request and added a personal note. "The Afrika Korps has no need for observers who have never fought in the desert. When the SS has combat experience equal to my veterans, they may observe." Until then, they would only be in the way. The insult was deliberate and public. Rommel was essentially calling the SS combat inexperienced amateurs. Meyer demanded satisfaction, a formal duel between officers. Rommel's aide recorded his commander's laughter when he heard about the duel challenge. "Tell Oberfuhrer Meyer that I don't duel with men who've never been shot at by the enemy. When he's earned his combat decorations the hard way, we can discuss honor." The rivalry was becoming personal, and personal rivalries in Nazi Germany had a way of turning deadly. But Rommel had one more card to play. His battlefield successes were making him untouchable. Every victory in North Africa strengthened his position against SS encroachment. Every captured British position was proof that Wehrmacht methods worked better than SS politics. By early 1942, the Rommel exception had become legendary throughout German forces. Wehrmacht officers would joke about needing desert transfers to escape SS interference. North Africa became known as the last place where real soldiers could fight a real war without political commissars looking over their shoulders. But the SS was patient. They knew that eventually even Rommel would need their help, and when that day came, they would collect on every insult, every refusal, every act of defiance. The Desert Fox had won this round, but the war between Wehrmacht and SS was just beginning, and soon the stakes would become much higher than personal pride or military autonomy. Soon, German soldiers would be dying not from enemy fire, but from the hatred between their own forces. The supply wars were about to begin, and they would make recruitment disputes look like playground arguments. The supply convoy never arrived. For the third time in 2 weeks, Wehrmacht units on the Eastern Front were running dangerously low on ammunition, while SS divisions nearby had full stockpiles. It wasn't enemy action. It wasn't bad weather. It was something far more sinister. It was Germans sabotaging Germans. Captain Ernst Weber of the Wehrmacht's 3rd Panzer Division discovered the truth by accident. While searching for misdirected supplies, he found Wehrmacht supply officers deliberately routing SS shipments to wrong locations. Dead ends. Empty fields. Sometimes straight to enemy positions. When he confronted his own logistics chief, the man didn't even try to deny it. "They get the best of everything while our boys make do with scraps," the officer said, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. Time they learned what shortage feels like. The supply wars had begun. Wehrmacht units were actively sabotaging SS operations, and the SS was returning the favor with interest. Both sides were fighting 2 wars now. One against the enemy, another against each other. Picture this nightmare scenario. You're a German soldier on the Eastern Front in 1943. The Soviets are counterattacking. Your unit is desperately low on ammunition. You can see an SS supply depot less than a kilometer away, fully stocked with everything you need. But your commanding officer would rather see you die than ask the SS for help. That's exactly what happened to Sergeant Klaus Richter near Kursk. His Wehrmacht company was surrounded by Soviet forces, down to their last few rounds of ammunition. An SS supply convoy was passing just outside their perimeter. Richter's captain refused to request assistance. "We don't beg from those political parasites," he said. "We'll break out with what we have or die trying." They died trying. All but 3 men in Richter's company were killed in the breakout attempt. The SS convoy passed by, close enough to hear the gunfire, but received no distress calls because Wehrmacht pride was worth more than Wehrmacht lives. But ammunition wasn't the only weapon being turned against their own side. Information was even more valuable and far more dangerous. Lieutenant Colonel Hans Oster of Wehrmacht intelligence had been keeping detailed records of SS atrocities since 1939, not for prosecution, for leverage. He understood that in Nazi Germany, information was power, and compromising material was insurance. His files contained evidence that would hang half the SS leadership. Unauthorized executions, looting of captured territories, war crimes that violated even Nazi Germany's twisted version of military law. And he made sure certain SS commanders knew he had those files. The message was clear: stay out of Wehrmacht business, or these documents find their way to the wrong desks. SS Oberfuhrer Karl Wolff later testified to Allied interrogators about this intelligence war. We knew the Wehrmacht was documenting everything we did, every operation, every casualty report, every irregular action. It felt like fighting with a knife at our backs. But the Wehrmacht's most devastating weapon wasn't supplies or information. It was reputation. Wehrmacht officers began warning civilian populations about incoming SS units. Not officially, that would be treason. But word spread through unofficial channels whenever SS divisions were approaching. Villagers would evacuate. Resistance groups would prepare for brutal crackdowns. Local administrators would hide records and valuables. The warnings were ostensibly for civilian protection, but they had a devastating effect on SS operations. Empty villages yielded no intelligence. Hidden records meant no administrative control. Evacuated civilians couldn't be used as forced labor or interrogated for information about partisan activities. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg recorded one such incident in his private notes. Warned the mayor of Ternopil that SS units were arriving tomorrow. Told him it was for security preparations. By morning, half the town had disappeared into the countryside. Let the SS explain to Berlin why their pacification operation found nobody to pacify. The SS retaliated by questioning Wehrmacht loyalty. They began filing reports about defeatist attitudes and insufficient National Socialist commitment among Wehrmacht officers. Each report was a potential death sentence in Nazi Germany, but the Wehrmacht had their own ways of fighting back. They started excluding SS units from operational planning meetings. Critical intelligence about enemy positions would somehow fail to reach SS commanders until it was too late to act. Radio frequencies would mysteriously change without notification to SS units. The most damaging form of sabotage was coordination failure. Wehrmacht and SS units operating in the same areas would receive conflicting orders, contradictory timing, incompatible objectives. Operations would collapse in confusion, with each side blaming the other. General Gotthard Heinrici later described the intentional chaos to American interrogators. We would plan an operation for 0600 hours. The SS would be told 0800. When they arrived late and the operation failed, we'd file reports about SS unreliability. They'd file reports about Wehrmacht sabotage. Both reports were true. But perhaps the most shocking evidence of internal warfare came from intercepted Wehrmacht communications. Allied codebreakers monitoring German military radio traffic couldn't believe what they were hearing. SS Panzer Group requesting artillery support. Grid reference 77 Alpha. Recommend negative. Let them solve their own problems. Intelligence indicates enemy counterattack probable. Wehrmacht units withdraw to secondary positions. SS units maintain current positions. Do not advise SS of withdrawal. And then the message that shocked Allied intelligence analysts to their core. We'd rather lose a battle than let the SS win it. That transmission, intercepted in July 1943, revealed something extraordinary. The German military was willing to accept tactical defeats rather than allow their supposed SS allies to claim victories. The Nazi war machine was consuming itself from within. The sabotage wasn't limited to combat operations. Wehrmacht medical units would develop supply shortages when treating SS wounded. SS casualties would experience administrative delays in medical evacuation. Critical medications would be unavailable for SS field hospitals. Dr. Heinrich Brenner, a Wehrmacht combat surgeon, later testified about this medical warfare. We took an oath to treat all wounded German soldiers equally. But when SS men came to our aid stations, equipment malfunctioned, supplies ran short, medications expired. We never refused treatment, but somehow SS casualties took longer to stabilize. The psychological warfare was equally vicious. Wehrmacht units would spread rumors about SS cowardice, SS incompetence, SS political connections being more important than combat effectiveness. These rumors would reach frontline soldiers, undermining SS morale and cohesion. Meanwhile, SS units retaliated by questioning Wehrmacht political reliability. They'd file reports about suspicious Wehrmacht officers who showed insufficient enthusiasm for Nazi racial policies. They'd investigate Wehrmacht units for defeatist attitudes after tactical withdrawals. By 1943, the internal warfare had become so destructive that Hitler himself was forced to intervene. He issued direct orders requiring coordination between Wehrmacht and SS units. But coordination required trust, and trust had been destroyed by years of mutual sabotage. The irony was lost on no one. Germany was fighting a global war while its own forces fought each other. The Wehrmacht and SS were spending more energy destroying each other than defeating their enemies, and their enemies were watching. Allied intelligence was intercepting evidence of German internal warfare and adjusting strategies accordingly. They knew that Wehrmacht and SS units wouldn't support each other effectively. They knew that coordination would fail under pressure. They knew that Germany's greatest weakness wasn't military capability. It was political unity. The sabotage war had achieved something no Allied operation could accomplish. It had turned the German military against itself. Once that trust was broken, it could never be repaired. Hitler had created two armies to serve one purpose. Instead, he'd created one purpose being served by two enemies. And as the war dragged on, that internal conflict would escalate from sabotage to something far worse. Soon, German soldiers would be pointing guns at each other. The Cold War between Wehrmacht and SS was about to become very hot indeed. But first, they would have to survive what was coming next. The Eastern Front was about to explode into the largest tank battle in human history. And when the smoke cleared at Kursk, the myth of German military superiority would lie shattered in the Russian mud. The question wasn't whether Germany would lose the war. The question was whether Wehrmacht and SS forces would destroy each other before the Allies could finish the job. December 17, 1944. A snowy crossroads near Malmedy, Belgium. American prisoners of war stood in a field with their hands raised, breath visible in the freezing air. What happened next would shatter any remaining pretense of unity between Wehrmacht and SS forces forever. SS Oberfuhrer Joachim Peiper commanded the 1st SS Panzer Division advancing through the Ardennes during Hitler's desperate winter offensive. His unit had captured 84 American soldiers during what would become known as the Battle of the Bulge. Standard military protocol required processing these prisoners and transporting them to POW camps. Instead, Peiper gave a different order. We don't have time for prisoners. You know what to do. The SS soldiers opened fire. 84 American prisoners were murdered in cold blood. No trial. No military justification. Just execution. But this time, Wehrmacht officers were watching. Major Werner Putschke of the Wehrmacht's 2nd Panzer Division had arrived at the crossroads minutes after the massacre. His unit was supposed to coordinate with Peiper's SS forces for the next phase of the offensive. Instead, he found a field full of American bodies and SS soldiers looting the corpses. Putschke's radio operator later testified to Allied interrogators about what his commander said when he saw the scene. "My God, they've done it again. These animals have doomed us all." The Wehrmacht had been fighting alongside the SS for years, but most officers had never witnessed SS atrocities firsthand. They'd heard rumors. They'd seen reports. But Malmedy was different. This was mass murder happening right in front of them, in broad daylight, with no attempt at concealment. Major Poetschke confronted Piper directly. "What you've done here violates every rule of war. These men were prisoners. They were defenseless." Piper's response, recorded by multiple witnesses, showed the gulf between Wehrmacht and SS thinking. Rules of war? We're fighting for the survival of the Aryan race. There are no rules in a race war. Poetschke immediately radioed Wehrmacht command, not to report tactical developments, to report a war crime. His message, intercepted by Allied intelligence, was stark. SS units have executed American prisoners, estimate 80 casualties, requesting immediate clarification of Wehrmacht policy regarding cooperation with SS forces involved in illegal actions. The response from Wehrmacht headquarters came within hours. General Hasso von Manteuffel, commanding the 5th Panzer Army, was explicit. Wehrmacht units will not participate in prisoner executions. Any SS requests for Wehrmacht support in such actions will be refused. Document all incidents for post-war accountability. That last line was devastating. Wehrmacht command was already planning to blame the SS for war crimes after Germany lost the war. They were creating a paper trail to separate themselves from SS atrocities. But the damage went far beyond documentation. Word of Malmedy spread through Wehrmacht units faster than official reports. Soldiers who had reluctantly cooperated with SS forces now refused outright. Sergeant Klaus Weber of the Wehrmacht's Panzer Lehr Division later described the reaction in his unit. "After Malmedy, everything changed. Before, we thought the SS were fanatics, but still soldiers. After, we knew they were murderers. No Wehrmacht soldier wanted to be associated with that." The SS tried to justify the massacre through official channels. Heinrich Himmler personally sent a message to Wehrmacht leadership, claiming the Americans had been attempting to escape and were shot while fleeing. The Wehrmacht's response was unprecedented. They officially rejected the SS explanation. General Wilhelm Keitel, chief of Wehrmacht High Command, sent a classified memo to all Army Group commanders. SS explanations regarding prisoner incidents are not supported by Wehrmacht observations. Wehrmacht personnel will provide accurate testimony regarding all prisoner-related incidents when requested by appropriate authorities. It was a declaration of independence. The Wehrmacht was publicly contradicting SS accounts and promising to testify against them. The united front between German military forces had shattered completely. The psychological impact on Wehrmacht soldiers was devastating. They realized that their reputation was tied to SS actions, whether they participated or not. Every Wehrmacht soldier would be seen as complicit in SS war crimes simply by wearing the same national insignia. Captain Ernst von Lahousen, Wehrmacht intelligence officer, was secretly recorded by British intelligence, expressing the despair felt by many Wehrmacht officers. "This is exactly what we warned would happen. Now we're all painted with their blood. The world will judge all German soldiers by what the SS has done. Our honor is destroyed by association." Wehrmacht units began taking unprecedented steps to distance themselves from SS operations. They started maintaining separate prisoner processing facilities. They refused to transfer captured enemy personnel to SS custody. They established independent communication channels to avoid SS monitoring. Most shocking of all, some Wehrmacht officers began warning Allied forces about SS unit locations and movements. Not as formal intelligence sharing. That would be treason. But through inadvertent radio transmissions on frequencies they knew were monitored. Through misdirected messages that found their way to enemy hands, Major Georg Grossjohann later admitted to American interrogators, "After Malmedy, some of us felt the Allies had more honor than our own SS. At least when Americans captured SS prisoners, they didn't execute them in fields. Maybe the wrong side was winning this war." The SS retaliated by questioning Wehrmacht loyalty more aggressively. SS security services began investigating Wehrmacht officers for defeatist attitudes. They filed reports claiming Wehrmacht sabotage of SS operations. They demanded Wehrmacht cooperation in security measures against captured partisans and civilians. Each demand was refused. Each refusal escalated the internal conflict. By January 1945, the situation had deteriorated so badly that Hitler himself was forced to intervene again. He issued orders requiring coordination between Wehrmacht and SS forces, but the orders were ignored by both sides. Wehrmacht field reports from this period reveal the complete breakdown of cooperation. SS requests for artillery support denied due to target verification requirements. Wehrmacht medical facilities unavailable for SS casualties due to supply shortages. Communication equipment malfunction prevents coordination with SS units. Every excuse was technically legitimate. Collectively, they represented systematic Wehrmacht sabotage of SS operations. The German military was at war with itself. The final break came in February 1945. SS Brigade Führer Kurt Meyer requested Wehrmacht engineering support to construct detention facilities for captured civilians. The Wehrmacht response was immediate and final. Wehrmacht engineers construct military fortifications, not execution facilities. Request denied permanently. It was over. Any pretense of cooperation between Wehrmacht and SS forces had ended. They were fighting the same war for opposite reasons, and Malmedy had made the differences impossible to ignore. The massacre had done more than kill 84 American prisoners. It had killed the myth of German military unity. From Malmedy forward, Wehrmacht and SS forces would fight as separate armies wearing the same uniform. And soon, they would be fighting each other directly. The breaking point came on July 20th, 1944. Wolf's Lair, East Prussia. The briefing room exploded at 12:42 p.m. Adolf Hitler survived the assassination attempt, barely. But what followed wasn't just a hunt for conspirators. It was the SS seizing total control of the German military. The bomb had been planted by Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, a Wehrmacht officer who'd lost his left eye, right hand, and 2 fingers fighting for Germany. He wasn't trying to help the Allies. He was trying to save Germany from the SS. 3 days before the assassination attempt, British intelligence had intercepted radio transmissions that revealed the true scope of Wehrmacht desperation. Allied codebreakers monitoring German military communications heard something extraordinary. Wehrmacht officers planning to arrest SS leadership. General Friedrich Olbricht, speaking to other conspirators, laid out their plan with chilling clarity. After we eliminate Hitler, Himmler and his black uniformed thugs are next. The SS has infected our military like a cancer. We'll arrest every SS officer above the rank of Oberfuhrer and put them on trial for war crimes. This wasn't just about removing Hitler. This was Wehrmacht officers planning to physically destroy the SS as an organization. They wanted to restore traditional military command and eliminate political soldiers entirely. Major General Henning von Treschow, one of the key conspirators, was even more explicit in a conversation recorded by Wehrmacht intelligence and later captured by the Allies. The SS represents everything wrong with our new Germany. They've turned military service into political theater. They've corrupted our officer corps with their racial nonsense. When this is over, every SS officer will face court-martial for crimes against military honor. But the SS had their own intelligence network, and they were listening too. SS Oberfuhrer Werner Best had been monitoring Wehrmacht communications since early 1944. He'd heard the growing discontent, the complaints about SS interference, the questions about Hitler's leadership. When he intercepted references to removing obstacles to military efficiency, he knew exactly what it meant. 3 hours after the Wolf's Lair explosion, while Hitler was still being treated for his injuries, Heinrich Himmler made his move. He didn't wait for Hitler's orders. He didn't consult with Wehrmacht leadership. He declared martial law and placed SS forces in control of all military communications, transportation, and supply networks. It was a coup disguised as emergency security measures. Colonel General Ludwig Beck, the former Wehrmacht chief of staff and leader of the conspiracy, realized immediately what was happening. His final message, sent just before SS forces surrounded Wehrmacht headquarters, was desperate. All Wehrmacht commanders, Priority Alpha, SS forces are seizing control under emergency authority. This is not authorized by Wehrmacht High Command. Resist SS takeover attempts. Maintain military chain of command. But it was too late. SS units had already surrounded key Wehrmacht installations. They weren't arresting conspirators. They were arresting anyone who might resist SS authority. The purge that followed was unprecedented in German military history. Not just conspirators were eliminated, anyone who had ever questioned SS methods, anyone who had refused SS cooperation, anyone who represented the old military traditions that threatened SS political control. General Erich Hübner, who had commanded panzer groups on the Eastern Front, was arrested not for participating in the plot, but for criticizing SS tank tactics in official reports. His crime was military professionalism that challenged SS competence. Field Marshal Erwin von Witzleben was executed not just for conspiracy, but for his public statements about SS political interference in military operations. The message was clear. Questioning the SS was now equivalent to treason. But the most chilling testimony came from survivors. Colonel Rudolf Christoph von Gersdorf, who escaped the initial purge, was secretly recorded by Allied intelligence after his capture. They weren't just killing resistors. They were eliminating anyone who questioned the SS, anyone who remembered what the German military was like before the Nazis. They were erasing our institutional memory. The executions continued for weeks. Over 4,000 Wehrmacht officers were arrested. Nearly 200 were executed immediately. The remainder faced imprisonment, demotion, or transfer to SS control. General Friedrich Fromm, commander of the replacement army, tried to save himself by personally arresting conspirators. It didn't matter. The SS executed him anyway. His crime wasn't conspiracy. It was commanding Wehrmacht forces that should have been under SS control. Major Otto Rammer, an SS officer who helped suppress the coup, later boasted about the purge's true purpose. July 20th wasn't about saving Hitler. Hitler was barely injured. It was about finishing what we started in 1933, eliminating the old military class that threatened our revolution. The political reshuffling that followed confirmed Wehrmacht fears. Heinrich Himmler was appointed commander of the replacement army, a traditionally Wehrmacht position. SS officers were placed in command of major Wehrmacht units. Military academies were purged of politically unreliable instructors. Most devastating of all, the SS gained control of Wehrmacht intelligence services. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence organization, was dissolved and absorbed into SS security services. Wehrmacht officers lost their independent source of information about enemy capabilities and intentions. General Reinhard Gehlen, former head of Wehrmacht intelligence on the Eastern Front, described the impact in post-war testimony. After July 20th, we were fighting blind. All our intelligence came through SS channels. They filtered everything through their political agenda. We stopped getting accurate reports about Soviet strength because the SS only wanted to hear good news. The transformation was completed by September 1944. Wehrmacht units found themselves commanded by SS officers who had no military training but absolute political authority. Traditional military protocols were replaced by SS racial ideology. combat effectiveness became secondary to political reliability. The result was military chaos. SS commanders ordered attacks based on political objectives rather than tactical sense. Wehrmacht officers who protested these orders faced court-martial for defeatism. Units began receiving contradictory orders from Wehrmacht and SS command structures. Captain Bernd Freitag von Loringhoven, one of the few Wehrmacht staff officers to survive the purge, kept a secret diary documenting the collapse. September 15th, SS Oberfuhrer demands attack on Soviet positions without artillery preparation. Military suicide, but questioning orders means arrest. We're not soldiers anymore. We're hostages of our own government. October 3rd, Wehrmacht casualty reports modified by SS censors before reaching high command. They're hiding our losses to maintain morale. How can we plan operations without accurate information? November 20th, 3 Wehrmacht colonels arrested for pessimistic assessments of German defensive capabilities. Truth is now treason. We're living in a military fantasy. By winter 1944, Wehrmacht officers were planning their own resistance to SS control. Not another assassination attempt. They'd learned that lesson. Instead, they began systematically undermining SS military authority through bureaucratic warfare, false reports, delayed orders, communication failures that prevented SS units from coordinating effectively, supplies misdirected to Wehrmacht units instead of SS formations, medical evacuations unavailable for SS casualties. The SS responded with increasing brutality. Wehrmacht officers were executed for sabotage based on the flimsiest evidence. Entire Wehrmacht units were disbanded and their personnel transferred to SS control. Military traditions dating back centuries were declared politically unreliable and banned. General Walter Warlimont, deputy chief of Wehrmacht Operations Staff, captured the desperation in his final report before fleeing to Allied lines. The SS has destroyed the German military from within. We are no longer fighting for Germany. We are fighting for Himmler's vision of racial empire. The Wehrmacht as an institution is dead. What remains is a collection of SS political units wearing Wehrmacht uniforms. July 20th had failed to kill Hitler, but it had succeeded in killing something else. Any remaining cooperation between Wehrmacht and SS forces. The coup attempt had given the SS the excuse they needed to eliminate Wehrmacht independence completely. What emerged wasn't German military unity. It was SS military dictatorship. And Wehrmacht officers who survived the purge would never forget who had destroyed their institution. The recording that almost started a civil war had instead ended one. The Wehrmacht had lost. The SS had won, but the war wasn't over yet. And the Wehrmacht was about to get their revenge in the most unexpected way possible. Soon, German soldiers would be fighting alongside American forces against their own countrymen. The final act of this internal war was about to begin, and it would be more shocking than anything that had come before. May 5th, 1945, Castle Itter, Austria. The war was ending, but one Wehrmacht major was about to make history by doing something unprecedented, fighting alongside Americans against his own countrymen. Major Josef Gangl commanded the Wehrmacht garrison at Castle Itter, a fortress that had been converted into a prison for high-value French political prisoners, former prime ministers, resistance leaders, anyone the SS considered too dangerous to execute, but too important to release. That morning, Gangl received new orders from SS Oberfuhrer Walter Weiss. Execute all prisoners immediately. Leave no witnesses. Destroy all evidence. Germany was collapsing, and the SS wanted to eliminate anyone who might testify about their crimes. Gangl stared at the order for a long time. Then he called his senior sergeant. "I'm a soldier, not a murderer," he said quietly. "We're not doing this." It was a death sentence. Refusing direct SS orders meant execution for treason. But Gangl had watched the SS destroy everything he'd served 30 years to protect. German military honor, professional competence, basic human decency. He had had enough. Sergeant Hans Waltner later testified to American investigators about his commander's decision. The major said, "We'd spent 6 years watching SS murderers destroy Germany's reputation. He wouldn't let them add these prisoners to their list of victims. If that made us traitors to the SS, so be it." We were still loyal to Germany, but refusing the order was only the beginning. Gangl knew that SS reinforcements would arrive within hours to carry out the executions themselves. His small Wehrmacht garrison couldn't hold the castle against a determined SS assault, so he made a decision that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. He contacted the approaching American forces and offered to surrender. The message, recorded by American intelligence, was unprecedented. Major Gangl at Castle Itter, I Castle, if they would help him protect the prisoners from the SS, the Radio D. American forces, this is Wehrmacht immediate assistance to prevent war crimes. Will provide intelligence, have French political prisoners under my protection. SS forces are approaching to execute these prisoners. I request and tactical support against SS positions. Lieutenant Jack Lee of the American 12th Armored Division couldn't believe what he was hearing. A Wehrmacht officer was asking for help to fight against other German forces. It was exactly the kind of intelligence break that could provide crucial insight into German internal warfare. Lee's response was immediate. "Major Gangl, we can provide support, but we need proof this isn't a trap." Gangl's proof came in the form of detailed intelligence about SS positions, troop movements, and defensive capabilities. Information that only a genuine Wehrmacht defector would possess. Information that was immediately actionable against German forces. The American tank crews couldn't believe what they were seeing when they arrived at Castle Itter. Wehrmacht soldiers fighting alongside American infantry against SS positions. Germans helping Americans target German defensive positions with artillery. It was the physical manifestation of the Civil War that had been brewing for years. Sergeant Bill Rushford of the American 12th Armored later described the surreal scene. "There we were, shooting at Germans while other Germans loaded our ammunition. Wehrmacht guys were pointing out SS sniper positions and helping us coordinate attacks against their own countrymen. The battle lasted 14 hours. Wehrmacht soldiers fought with desperate courage against SS forces, not for Hitler, not for Nazi ideology, but to prevent the execution of prisoners and to settle years of accumulated hatred." Major Gangl was killed by an SS sniper while directing American artillery fire against SS positions. His last words, recorded by his sergeant, were revealing. "At least we died as soldiers, not as murderers." When the battle ended, the surviving Wehrmacht soldiers formally surrendered to American forces. But their surrender statements were unlike anything Allied interrogators had heard before. "We weren't fighting for Nazi Germany," one Wehrmacht corporal explained. "We were fighting against it. The SS destroyed everything we believed in. Honor, duty, military professionalism. They turned our uniforms into costumes for political theater." The Castle Itter battle became symbolic of something larger. Wehrmacht units across Austria and southern Germany were actively cooperating with Allied forces against SS holdouts. Information sharing, joint operations, sometimes direct military cooperation. General Heinz Guderian, one of Germany's most famous tank commanders, was captured while attempting to negotiate the surrender of his entire army group to American forces rather than face SS security forces. His interrogation revealed the depth of Wehrmacht desperation. "We'd rather face American prisoner of war camps than SS political trials," he admitted. "At least the Americans follow the Geneva Convention. The SS follows no rules except their own twisted ideology," Intelligence reports from this period document unprecedented cooperation between Wehrmacht officers and Allied forces, not just information sharing, but active collaboration in hunting down SS war criminals. Colonel Rudolf von Gersdorff provided American intelligence with detailed maps of SS installations, personnel rosters, and evidence of war crimes. His motivation was simple revenge. They destroyed my army, murdered my friends, and dishonored my country. Now they can face justice. But the most shocking evidence came from General Wilhelm Keitel himself. Chief of Wehrmacht High Command, he had cooperated with Nazi policies for years. But in his final interrogation, he revealed something extraordinary. By 1944, Wehrmacht Command was actively sabotaging SS operations. We delayed reinforcements. We misdirected supplies. We provided inaccurate intelligence. We wanted Germany to lose the war because SS victory meant the death of everything German military tradition represented. The admission stunned Allied interrogators. The German military had been intentionally undermining their own war effort to prevent SS dominance. They preferred Allied occupation to SS rule. Field Marshal Ferdinand Schörner, commanding Army Group Center, went even further. In a secret recording made by Allied intelligence, he admitted Wehrmacht units had deliberately weakened defensive positions to allow Allied breakthroughs in areas where SS forces would bear the brunt of defeat. We opened corridors for Allied advances that would bypass Wehrmacht positions and strike SS formations directly, he confessed. Better to lose battles than let the SS win the war. The scope of Wehrmacht collaboration with Allied forces during the war's final months was staggering. Airfield locations, submarine base coordinates, supply depot positions, communications frequencies, defensive plans. Everything was compromised by Wehrmacht officers who saw Allied victory as preferable to SS dominance. Major General Walter Wenck, commanding the 12th Army, used his forces to help American units locate and capture SS leaders attempting to escape to South America. His intelligence networks, built over years of fighting the SS, became Allied assets in the hunt for war criminals. But perhaps the most damning evidence came from Admiral Karl Dönitz. Commander of the German Navy, he had maintained better relations with the Wehrmacht than most Nazi leaders. His final assessment of the internal war was devastating. The SS destroyed German military effectiveness more completely than any Allied bombing campaign. They turned our own forces against each other. By 1945, Wehrmacht units were more interested in fighting the SS than fighting the Allies. American intelligence analysts studying intercepted German communications were amazed by the extent of internal warfare. Entire Wehrmacht divisions had been paralyzed, not by enemy action, but by internal sabotage. SS units had been left isolated and unsupported by Wehrmacht forces that were supposed to be their allies. General Omar Bradley, commanding American ground forces in Europe, later wrote about the intelligence windfall provided by Wehrmacht defectors. We learned more about German defensive capabilities from German officers than from our own reconnaissance. They were eager to help us defeat the SS, even if it meant Germany's total defeat. The psychological impact on regular German soldiers was profound. They realized their own officers preferred Allied victory to SS dominance. That Wehrmacht command had been working against German military success to prevent SS political control. Private Hans Weber, captured during the final weeks of fighting, expressed the confusion felt by ordinary soldiers. We thought we were fighting for Germany. Then we discovered our own generals wanted us to lose. They said losing to Americans was better than winning for the SS. The intelligence provided by Wehrmacht sources was operationally decisive in the war's final phase. Allied forces knew exactly where to strike for maximum psychological impact. They knew which German units would resist fiercely and which would surrender readily. They knew how to exploit the divisions between Wehrmacht and SS forces. Most importantly, they knew that German military resistance was hollow because German military leadership had lost faith in their own cause. The Wehrmacht wasn't just losing battles. It was actively helping the Allies win them. When Germany finally surrendered on May 8, 1945, the ceremony was revealing. Wehrmacht officers signed surrender documents with evident relief. SS officers either refused to participate or signed with obvious reluctance. Even in defeat, the two sides remained enemies. General Alfred Jodl, signing the surrender documents for Wehrmacht High Command, made a statement that captured 6 years of internal warfare. The German Wehrmacht fought honorably against overwhelming odds. We were defeated not by our enemies, but by those who claimed to be our allies. He was referring to the SS, the political soldiers who had destroyed German military effectiveness from within, who had turned military service into ideological theater, who had made Wehrmacht officers prefer foreign occupation to domestic tyranny. The war was over, but the hatred remained. In prisoner of war camps, Wehrmacht and SS personnel had to be separated to prevent violence. Allied guards reported constant fights between German soldiers who were supposed to be comrades. The final irony was complete. Hitler had created 2 armies to ensure his power. Instead, he had created 2 enemies who destroyed each other. The Wehrmacht's war against the SS had contributed as much to Germany's defeat as any Allied military campaign. And in the end, Wehrmacht officers got what they wanted. The SS was destroyed as a military organization. Its leaders were executed or imprisoned. Its political influence was eliminated forever. The price was Germany itself. But to Wehrmacht officers who had watched the SS corrupt everything they believed in, that price seemed acceptable. They had fought 2 wars. Against the Allies, they had lost. Against the SS, they had won. And sometimes, winning the right war matters more than winning the war itself. The trials began in Nuremberg in November 1945, but the most explosive testimony didn't come from Holocaust survivors or Allied prosecutors. It came from German soldiers testifying against other German soldiers. Major General Walter Warlimont took the witness stand on March 15, 1946. For 30 minutes, he calmly detailed Wehrmacht intelligence operations, standard military testimony about troop movements, and defensive positions. Then the prosecutor asked about SS cooperation. Warlimont's entire demeanor changed. Cooperation? His voice turned ice cold. We documented every SS atrocity specifically to use as evidence against them after the war. Every execution, every war crime, every violation of military law. We knew this day would come. The courtroom fell silent. This wasn't a captured enemy reluctantly providing information. This was a German general eagerly helping to prosecute other Germans. He reached into his briefcase and produced a thick folder. I have detailed records of 847 separate incidents where SS units violated the laws of war between 1941 and 1945. Times, dates, locations, commanding officers, witness statements. Everything documented by Wehrmacht personnel who were disgusted by what they saw. The implications were staggering. The German military had been building a war crimes case against their own SS allies since 1941. 4 years of evidence collection. 4 years of preparing to destroy the SS through legal proceedings. But Warlimont wasn't finished. He opened the folder and began reading specific incidents. June 23, 1941. SS Oberfuhrer Theodor Eicke ordered the execution of 127 Soviet prisoners near Minsk. Wehrmacht observers Lieutenant Colonel Hans Oster and Major Klaus Schenk documented the murders with photographs and witness statements. August 15, 1942. SS Brigade Führer Kurt Meyer directed the killing of Canadian prisoners at Normandy. Wehrmacht Captain Ernst Weber filed a formal complaint with military legal authorities and maintained evidence for post-war prosecution. Each entry was precise, detailed, damning. The Wehrmacht hadn't just witnessed SS atrocities. They had systematically documented them for exactly this purpose. Defense attorneys for SS defendants were horrified. Their clients weren't just facing Allied prosecution. They were facing evidence compiled by their own supposed allies, Germans who had spent years building cases against other Germans. SS Oberfuhrer Josef Dietrich's attorney tried desperately to discredit Wehrmacht testimony. These men are trying to save themselves by blaming the SS for everything. They're making us scapegoats for their own failures. General Heinz Guderian's response from the witness stand was devastating. Scapegoats. We have photographs. We have sworn statements from dozens of Wehrmacht officers. We have radio intercepts of SS commanders ordering murders. We have physical evidence collected at crime scenes. This isn't scapegoating. This is justice. The prosecution presented evidence that Wehrmacht units had maintained parallel intelligence networks specifically to monitor SS activities. Not Soviet positions, not Allied movements, their own supposed allies. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg's personal files, recovered from his estate, contained detailed dossiers on SS leaders, not military assessments, criminal profiles, evidence of corruption, brutality, war crimes, information compiled for post-war trials. The July 20th conspirators hadn't just been planning to assassinate Hitler. They had been preparing comprehensive prosecutions of the entire SS leadership structure. Lists of crimes, witness testimonies, physical evidence, everything needed for mass trials. But the most shocking revelation came when prosecutors revealed the scope of Wehrmacht cooperation with Allied intelligence, not just during the final months of war. Throughout the entire conflict, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of Wehrmacht intelligence until 1944, had been secretly providing information to Allied forces since 1940. Submarine patrol routes deliberately leaked to British naval intelligence. Luftwaffe flight plans shared with Allied air forces. German defensive positions compromised to ensure Allied breakthrough operations would succeed. The motive wasn't treason against Germany. It was warfare against the SS. Canaris's personal diary, discovered in 1946, contained his reasoning. Every German defeat weakens the SS. Every military failure reduces their political power. Better to lose the war than let them win it. General Ludwig Beck's final letter, written hours before his execution, following the July 20th plot, revealed the ultimate Wehrmacht strategy. They had been intentionally losing the war to prevent SS victory. We cannot defeat the SS through military action. They control too much of the state apparatus. But we can ensure their defeat by engineering German military collapse. Let the Allies do what we cannot. Destroy Heinrich Himmler's empire. The letter outlined specific Wehrmacht operations designed to assist Allied victory. Defensive positions deliberately weakened. Supply lines sabotaged. Intelligence networks compromised. Military effectiveness systematically undermined. Not by enemy action. By German officers who preferred foreign occupation to SS domination. The SS defendants were stunned. Their own allies had been working for their defeat since 1940. Every military disaster, every strategic failure, every tactical collapse had been engineered by Wehrmacht officers who wanted the SS destroyed more than they wanted Germany to win. Heinrich Himmler's personal adjutant, SS Oberfuhrer Werner Best, testified about discovering Wehrmacht sabotage operations in 1944. We found evidence that Wehrmacht units were deliberately providing targeting information to Allied bomber crews. German officers were helping enemy forces bomb German positions if those positions were held by SS units. The scope of the betrayal was unprecedented in military history. An army systematically destroying itself to eliminate a rival organization. Officers choosing national defeat over political defeat. But the Wehrmacht's ultimate revenge came in the sentences. Every major SS leader was convicted based largely on evidence provided by Wehrmacht sources. The documentation was too comprehensive, too detailed, too damning to ignore. SS Oberführer Ernst Kaltenbrunner was hanged based on Wehrmacht intelligence about concentration camp operations. SS Brigadeführer Oswald Pohl was executed using evidence collected by Wehrmacht financial investigators. SS Oberführer Karl Wolff received life imprisonment through testimony from dozens of Wehrmacht witnesses. The organization that had destroyed Wehrmacht independence was systematically eliminated through Wehrmacht evidence. Meanwhile, Wehrmacht officers received relatively lenient treatment. General Heinz Guderian was released after 2 years. Admiral Karl Dönitz served 10 years and became a respected elder statesman. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein was freed after serving 4 years of an 18-year sentence. The message was clear. Cooperating against the SS earned significant leniency from Allied prosecutors. Wehrmacht officers who had helped destroy the Nazi regime were treated as assets, not enemies. General Franz Halder, former Wehrmacht Chief of Staff, summed up the final victory in his memoirs published in 1962. "We lost the war but won the peace. The SS is gone forever. Their leaders are dead or imprisoned. Their ideology is discredited. Their organization is destroyed. Germany can rebuild without their poison." The strategy had worked. Wehrmacht officers had sacrificed Germany to destroy the SS. They had chosen temporary occupation over permanent SS domination. They had gambled their nation's independence to eliminate their political enemies. And in the brutal calculus of institutional survival, they had won. By 1950, former Wehrmacht officers were serving in NATO forces and West German government positions. Their military expertise was valued. Their anti-communist credentials were appreciated. Their cooperation in destroying the SS had earned Allied trust. Meanwhile, SS survivors remained pariahs. Those who escaped execution faced decades in prison. Those who avoided capture lived in exile and shame. The organization had been so thoroughly discredited that association with it remained toxic for generations. The final irony was complete. Hitler had created the SS to ensure Nazi permanence. Instead, the SS had ensured Nazi destruction. Their rivalry with the Wehrmacht had turned Germany's own military against the regime. Wehrmacht officers had spent 6 years documenting evidence, planning prosecutions, and engineering defeats specifically to destroy the SS after the war ended. They had turned military service into a long-term intelligence operation against their own government. The cost had been Germany itself. But to Wehrmacht leaders who watched the SS corrupt everything they believed in, that cost was acceptable. They preferred Allied occupation to SS domination. They chose foreign democracy over domestic tyranny. The last shot in the Wehrmacht-SS war had been fired not on any battlefield, but in the Nuremberg courtroom. Wehrmacht evidence had destroyed the SS more completely than any military campaign. Heinrich Himmler had dreamed of creating an elite that would rule Germany for 1,000 years. Instead, he had created enemies who ensured the SS wouldn't survive even 12 years. The failed chicken farmer who had built an empire of terror had been destroyed by the professional soldiers he had tried to replace. The political amateurs had been eliminated by military professionals who understood that some victories require losing everything else first. The Wehrmacht had fought 2 wars. Against the Allies, they had lost quickly. Against the SS, they had won permanently. And sometimes, winning the right war is the only victory that matters. The recordings stopped in 1947. The last Wehrmacht officer finished his testimony. The final SS leader was sentenced. The courtroom in Nuremberg fell silent for the last time, but the real verdict had been written years earlier in supply depots and command bunkers across Europe. Hitler's greatest mistake wasn't invading Russia or declaring war on America. It was creating two armies that hated each other more than they hated their enemies. The Wehrmacht won their war, not against the Allies, but against the SS. They chose defeat over dishonor, occupation over corruption, foreign democracy over domestic tyranny. Sometimes the most important victories require losing everything else first. Sleep well tonight, knowing that even in humanity's darkest hour, some soldiers still chose honor over orders.